Three, two, one. Hello, Angela. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Marty, for having me here. I'm very happy to be part of your podcast.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And for anybody listening, for anybody that is not yet familiar with who you are and what you do, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Angela. I'm Angela Blanco. I'm the founder of lightspanish.com. I have a Spanish school, works online, and we work with adults from mainly from English-speaking countries and from Europe. And that's mainly my whole passion of what I do every day.
And how did you get started with that? Why did you decide to start your own school?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I was always interested about teaching and education, right? I didn't study education in the university at the first place. Then, of course, I continued my studies, master's degree on that because it became necessary. But at the beginning, I just had this passion for helping people. I don't think that is like telling them what to do, but help them to see their progress. That's kind of addictive. So I studied music when I was younger, and I was a classical guitarist. And I used to teach children to play the guitar and to play piano and all of it. While I was studying literature in the university, I was giving music lessons as well. So for me, it was great to have the opportunity to teach one-to-one. You know, that unique thing that unfortunately many educators don't have the opportunity to enjoy, and is just to be able to get to know someone and help that someone to get better. Sometimes they have huge groups, and unfortunately they cannot do anymore. They do what they can. So I got used to that. I got used to give small lessons, teach maybe more than maximum 6 people at the same time. So with music back then, and then I moved to teaching literature, of course, education related to books and history of the Latin American, etc., because I'm from Colombia. And I had the opportunity to go to Jamaica. It was volunteership, kind of scholarship slash volunteership, where I was receiving English lessons in the mornings, and I was giving Spanish lessons in the afternoons at one of the most prestigious universities in Jamaica. So it was amazing. And I realized that the same that I was doing with music, I was able to do it with Spanish. I had very small groups as well because I was teaching the staff. So secretaries, the people who were working and dealing with many documents in Spanish, because of course Jamaica is an English speaking country. However, many people from Latin America are interested in traveling there, maybe to continue their studies. So they were receiving applications in Spanish, things like that. So they really wanted to build that bridge or feel more confident about what the information was about, at least the basic things. So yeah, I got used to have these small groups as well with the Spanish. And so I can say that from there, when I came back to my country after this experience, I just said, I want to become a Spanish tutor for foreigners. I want to do Spanish as a second language. So I did my master's degree, I did some other studies, and became obsessed with language. And so that's mainly my journey, and that's how I started with music, and then Spanish as a second language was my thing, and here we are.
And that's a really fascinating story. I love how that developed into, oh, I just want to do that versus, okay, you started with something else and then you slowly realized that, oh, this could be fun as well. I could really enjoy that as well.
Yes, yeah, you mentioned that, and I just think that maybe when you are in your own country, you don't. I mean, I didn't even know that that was. I mean, it sounds silly, but I didn't think about that as a possibility. You know, like that. I want to teach Spanish to foreigners. You know, it's maybe not the first thought when I was doing education and all these things with the music. I thought, well, that's something I can help people with. And if I go to literature, I will have to be at the university or maybe teaching Spanish to Spanish speakers, like history of the language and all of it that every country has. But going to Jamaica was like, this is great to see the progress of people getting excited about pronouncing words, or saying things
Yeah.
in another language. So yeah, just that moment I realized, yeah, this is something I can do, and I feel very happy with. So,
And you said that during that experience you got English lessons in the mornings. Would you say that was the beginning of your journey with English, or had you already studied English beforehand?
I well, talking to teacher to teacher, I was supposed to have a B1 level at least to go to Jamaica, right? Because I had to give lessons, so it was very complicated if I was completely lost with the
Sure.
language. And of course, for survival reasons, it would be wise to know some
Sure. Yep.
English to communicate. Uh, in Colombia, you have, and maybe it's the same in your country, you have these lessons at school, right? So you take English lessons at school. They're not amazing in my case. I don't know how is it there. They're not amazing unless you go to a school that is specialized in languages. All what you get is the very basic stuff, the to be verb conjugated, I don't know, playing, working, then like something that you can do to build sense, to make something, you know, basic. But no, my English journey really started when I finished school and I went to the university. So I was taking some lessons as part of my career that helped me to reach that point. I was curious about English. I mean, it wasn't just like something I had to do. It was something that I was generally interested about. So, so yeah, that's why Jamaica really resonated. And I thought, well, that would be great because that would be the opportunity for me to get used to listen to native speakers and solve situations, and not to. I was always listening to my English teachers that were from Colombia, and I wanted to, have that exposition, the exposure to the language in real life. So, yeah, that was the moment when I felt like, okay, and Jamaica really became stronger at English, but I already had some bases. Yeah.
Certainly, certainly. And would you say, and I suppose this is typically the experience that you feel maybe relatively comfortable with your skills, that okay, I can, like you said, get the basics, I can survive. And then when you got to Jamaica, did you experience that shock that, oh, okay, I actually know not as much as I thought I did? Or did you feel quite good, quite comfortable that, okay, all of this work, all of this studying that I've been doing is actually paying off?
That's a wonderful question, because what comes to my mind is, well, something interesting that happens in Colombia in terms of education is that you receive content from English speaking countries in general, right? So you have some things that come from American English, not so much Canadian, but at least from the USA. And you listen to those or shows or television entertainment tends to come from those countries, but most of the academic content comes from the UK, right, from here, because I'm in the UK. So you don't know exactly, the pronunciation is always
Mm,
changing. And when I went to Jamaica, it was, oh, this is another accent that is
yeah.
very different. There were people also doing scholarships who came from New Zealand, Fiji, this other part of the world with very strong, different accents to the ones I
Yeah.
was used to. So it was a shock at first because I was thinking, okay, so I'm not understanding anything. What's going on? Of course, even Jamaica, they have a patois, which is a mixture between languages, something more local that they have in Caribbean countries. But even when they were speaking in English, I was getting lost. But yeah, but they were very lovely people. I have to admit that they just repeated and they just laugh at me sometimes, and you're not getting it. Let's do it again. Saying it very slowly and repeating it. So it was a shock, of course, but it really helped me to, just to take it as, if I don't get it, I just ask again. It's going to be fine.
And where do you feel you stand with both of your languages right now? If you compare your English to your Spanish, obviously it's difficult for them to be at the exact same level, but do you feel very comfortable in both, maybe equally or almost equally, or where would you say both of them lie for you at this moment?
Uh, well, I think maybe in the future I will feel that English is going to feel less comfortable as Spanish. But no, it's still something I feel uh that requires more energy. I say to my students, it requires more calories. Like you're burning calories here speaking
I
with
like
me,
that.
because
Yeah.
when you speak another language, you're just not organizing your ideas, but organizing your
Mm,
ideas in another language, so it's double work. But yeah, no, I feel confident that I'm able to express my ideas and say what I want to say, but it gets exhausting, of course. So I would have to consider my English, of course, at a low level. And of course, I'm not perfect at the language, to the point that I try to, but I'm not too stressed about it. I prefer to make myself understood. Uh, but yeah, of course it gets me more thinking. It makes me think more. I have to think like twice
certainly.
to organize
Certainly.
very complicated concepts. Yeah.
And I love that you feel that way, which I don't mean that at all in a negative way or anything like that, but I just love that you are here talking to me and talking about your life and your experiences. Like you said, even if you don't feel you're perfect, but it's okay. And obviously I can understand everything that you're saying, and that's suppose that's I suppose the whole purpose of it at the end of the day, right? Not to be perfect or to have everything figured out or anything like that, but just like you said, to express yourself, to show your emotions, your experiences, and share that with the world. At the end of the day is all that really matters, and I love that we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing feeling, to be able to communicate in another language and feel that, hey, the other people are getting what you're saying.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'd love to come back to your teaching and how you've been working with that, because we briefly mentioned this last time, and I very much like the approach that you take to teaching Spanish, because we were talking a little bit about the different intelligence types, and also the superpower that you employ within your teaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it began being something I knew. I wouldn't say unconsciously, but there was something important when I started talking to new students, and it was, what do you normally do? How do you normally approach information, right? Even if they didn't have the experience with languages before, because sometimes uh, many English speakers jump to Spanish and that's the first language they learn. Uh, is as how do you process information? What do you normally do when you have to remember something? Or their careers, because working with adults give me that unique opportunity of talking to a human being who has already developed some habits related to learning outside of school, right? Because at school they tell you what to do, but when you're an adult, you have been facing university work, etc. So well, normally when I have to remember information, or normally it's easier for me to remember songs. They get it stuck in my head, lyrics, or I love listening to podcasts, and I think that's the way I learned. So I was always making these questions. Both of my parents are psychologists, so I knew that there was a logic behind, clearly, and they always made me feel very conscious about the my brain, let's say, how it works and how I process information, and that helped me a lot during my life. So I wanted to repeat that as a basic principle, with my students. But then I started, well, going deeper in that aspect, and I realized that that would really make a difference and will help people feel more confident about what they're doing, right? So what I do is I ask them about these habits. We normally, with my students, when they start the process, we go through a very I wouldn't say very, but a long questionnaire, and we talk, like it's not just ABC. I try to expand the equation where we know exactly where are those strengths that I call superpowers, because I think that, yes, we have some abilities. Our brain has some ways of processing information, retaining information as well. And that's, I would say that that's set because we tend to have three different learning styles that are stronger. Our superpowers is the way that we should approach information to make it easier for us, right? Why would go to another path if we know that this one is going to help us better? So that's mainly what I say with the superpower thing, is recognizing that learning style, owning it and say like, yes, I'm good at this. So when someone is a good listener, has this auditive intelligence, I say like, well, you can enjoy the fact of playing with pronunciation, because you're very good at this. And it's people, there are people who are very, very good at repeating accents and tones, and they get stick with the accent. And sometimes they talk to people from other countries and they say, "Oh, did you learn Spanish in Colombia?" Is that no? because it's because I take lessons with someone from Colombia, so they're very good taking those accents. Those they have that superpower, so they could use it. Some others are very, very good at processing text or organizing grammar structures, because grammar is important, but it's an aspect of the language, of course. But not everyone is going to excel at the same point with grammar. Some people are amazing with grammar. So I say, well, enjoy this. Let's get into the logic, like the maths behind the grammar, because they're going to enjoy it more. And of course, we have to work on pronunciation as well, but maybe this is the thing that is going to keep you motivated, and that you're going to feel confident about. So it's like, yeah, maybe my pronunciation is getting there, but at least I'm very confident that I know the conjugations, for example, or that I'm very good at retaining vocabulary, that after reading a text, they're very good catching new words. And so yeah, that's mainly what I mean with this. I try to use those learning styles to help people to feel confident with the language and to continue learning and don't lose the motivation.
Certainly, certainly. And do you think that there is a way for people to find their own superpower?
Yeah, well, so when we're adults, we sort of know. However, I have created a small version of that whole questionnaire that I was mentioning before, that is there on my website for free. So you can at least get one of the strongest. I make some questions about what do you normally do when you face new information, or how do you normally interact with the world, because that gives you clues. So it's only 8 questions, but it gives you that answer, so it could make sense, and you will know, okay, so I'm good at this. This is normally what I'm good at. So yeah, it's there on my website if you want to check it. It is well, light Spanish, light LIGHT Spanish.com/my superpower. There you're going to get the results, and I'm going to give you some tricks after that, how to use it, of course.
Wonderful, wonderful. We'll probably put the link on screen so it's easy for people to find and to copy. But what you're talking about makes a whole lot of sense, and there is, like you said, a lot of logic behind it, because why reinvent the wheel and start all over again where you can just use what you're already naturally good at to your advantage? Of course, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're talking about that when we first talk, and is we listen to all these polyglots, or people who have learned lots of
Mm.
languages and are very good at those things. And now, after knowing this, I get the sense of, okay, this person, their superpower, their learning style is X, Y, or Z, depending on their
Okay.
recommendations, right? So it's very good. After that, you say, okay, this person, the ones who normally say, the first thing I do is talking to someone, right?
Mm.
And that's the principle that is going to make you fluent, for example. Some people
Yeah.
do these huge statements, and I think is, yes, but it works for you, right? Because this is your superpower, because you're very good at social communication. Not everyone is necessarily. Some people are very good at other things, or they're very good listening, so they catch meaning very fast. But if someone who doesn't have necessarily that strength at first, because something you develop, of course, but if you don't have the strength at first and you say, well, this person told me that the only or the best way to learn the language is to be in front of a native speaker before even knowing anything, like just basic things, and then being in front, it could be counterproductive, because you could get scared and you're like, no, I wasn't able to do it, this is not going to work for me, maybe I'm bad at languages, or maybe
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't have the amazing talent that people have for languages. So it's very sad, because trying to follow that approach maybe doesn't work, but if you go to another approaches, maybe you're going to do better. So yeah, I get all these nice recommendations from people who have master 20, 10, 5, I don't know, depends on the person, languages. But I say, well, let's use it according to your learning style. What you are good at, let's use them to your advantage. And don't worry if you don't learn the same way. Some people love translating, and that's the way they learn languages. I would find that very dull, to be honest. I wouldn't have the patience to go through a text and translate word by word. But some people are amazing at it. So yeah, it just depends on how you are, who you are, and what you're good at.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I have one student of mine that I always find very fascinating, because that's exactly what he does. He mentioned that there is this one video game that he played, and he translated everything step by step,
Wow.
everything in the video game, just taking
And he
notes and
likes it.
translate.
Yeah, he enjoys it.
Wow.
I'm not
Incredible.
that patient. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. But it's like you said, it's a wonderful way to show that, okay, well, this person did that and it worked for them. Maybe for me, it's not going to. Maybe, like you said, maybe I have a different superpower. But that's actually very interesting from from the psychological perspective, and I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that, because I found that a lot of people tend to be rather self-critical. Okay, maybe I'm not good at this, this isn't working. So, would you say that when you go through that process of, okay, you're good at this, do people accept that? That, oh, yes, I am good at this? Or is it more so, no, maybe I'm not really good at this? What's been your experience in general? Do people accept it that, yes, yes, I am, or not so much?
It's well, uh, our students have had a very positive approach to it, because when they receive the results and they know, so I say, well, you're very good at, you're a very visual learner, you're also very good at communication, like social interactions, and let's say linguistic, you have a verbal linguistic intelligence, they smile, because they know it's true, you
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
They're like, yes, I tend to do this. So when you get the results, you kind of say, okay, yeah, that's true, that makes a lot of sense. uh but of course that would depend a lot on the beliefs that you have about languages beforehand, right? So some cultures unfortunately have been told that you have to uh, get some certain of like requirements to be good at languages, or that maybe you're too old, or that it's too late, or that you have to get lots of time, or things like that. So that those are the things normally I struggle more with. I mean, in terms of helping them to overcome them and get confident and that they can do it. And is, yeah, as people say, well, I'm too old, and I don't know, they're 30. It's like, well, no, of course not. Or even I have students who are over the, yeah, I have one student from Australia that he's 74, I think, and he is learning Spanish and he loves it. And of course, you would say that maybe you have to be stronger in terms of um, the memory. You have to work more with retaining information. Of course, but it doesn't mean that he's not able to communicate in Spanish, because he has traveled to Spain and has talked to his son-in-law, which is the motivation to learn the language, and he feels very happy about that. Yeah, got it.
Yeah, of course.
So there is not a real limitation that said, well, you kind of that part of your brain who processes languages, or those parts of your brains who could retain information about languages, are lost after a certain age. Is so those are the limitations, those beliefs that sometimes limit people, that I think are more difficult to work with. But I think that the superpower approach has helped me to help them to feel confident about that, because at school you never listened about it. You don't know. Everyone is receiving information the same way. You're in front of a teacher and they talk, and now education is evolving a lot, of course, and they are getting more engaged, which I really appreciate. And I'm happy for children now. But in general terms, you're not able to really know who you are in terms of learning. So you think that you're bad. Maybe you took Spanish lessons at school, you didn't go well for, for any reason, and you say, nah, Spanish is not my thing. I tried, but it was horrible. And it's just because they taught in one way, right? It was just one way to learn the language. So those are the things that normally uh, create more limitations, and that we have to work with and overcome. Yeah.
And would you say that there are any universal principles or tactics or tricks or tips or anything like that, that no matter what your superpower is, XYZ is a good way to go? Or is there not really anything that universal?
Well, I wouldn't I wouldn't be able to say that there is only one unique way to do it. I think the biggest principle is to expose yourself to the language, right? Everyone would agree on that. Is you have to get involved, to get used to it, to feel that curiosity. I would say that maybe curiosity is the the principle, the universal principle to learn
Yeah.
anything, not only languages, anything. Because if you are told that you have to learn maths, for example, and you don't feel interested, or yeah, you don't enjoy it at all, it doesn't matter how many hours you spend in front of it, you're going to hate it. So I think curiosity, just that desire of what's that, or oh, I listened to this word, what does it mean? I think I'm going to check, or today I'm going to learn something about this and that, or I'm going to watch a show, I'm going to listen to that curiosity, and that discipline as well. A mix between those two would be universal, I would say, because that's what has helped. I think all of the students that I've seen that have reached fluency have that in common.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I really like that you're mentioning that a few weeks ago I had a podcast with a former radio host, Joe Pardavilla. I'd probably link it somewhere here as well, but he was talking about that as well, and I really like that you mentioned it about that curiosity, that it's almost trying to find a way to make yourself curious about the things that maybe you don't know really want to learn, but you kind of do. Maybe you have to, maybe there's some kind of external force that's okay, well, I kind of have to do this, but I don't know how. And what he was talking about, and I'd love to get your take on this as well, that, for example, maybe I'm not super curious about maths, like you said, but maybe I very much enjoy space or rocket science, and there is a I would imagine a rather big correlation between the two. So how can I marry those two things, this thing that I'm not really curious about and this thing that I am, combining them somehow? Would you say that approach could also work with languages?
Yeah, and that's a huge advantage that we have with languages, and is that everything could be literally translated to that. So there is, if you're passionate about uh car racing, thinking about the word, I'm not. I'm sure that you can find lots of websites and videos and information in the language you're learning. Of course, there are some exceptions. If there's a language that very, very few people talk, or is at that tongue, those cases. is going to be very difficult. But most of the time, languages that we want to learn are active, are spoken. So you can find lots of information about the thing you're passionate about. For example, you're a student with video games. Video games is something that you can get in every language.
Right.
If you even you can find it in Spanish. You just get the Spanish version of it. You just set it for that. So yeah, it's something that you're already passionate about that could help you to get that motivation. That's true. And languages are certainly something that you can connect very easily to your interests.
And you mentioned music at the very beginning that we started talking, and I believe that a lot of people utilize music also, whether that's listening to songs and lyrics or having that rhythm and trying to memorize something in that particular way. Do you use that personally as well for English, maybe for any other languages that you're learning? Do you use music for yourself?
Yeah, music has been my first approach to a language I want to learn. Mm, so yeah, in my case, it's extremely important. I don't use it as the only path because that songs tend to be sometimes about some certain topics, and that would be all. So maybe that doesn't work for a restaurant. Let's talk about love and
Yeah,
things like that. But it's my way to, let's say, fall in love with the language. That happened to me with Turkish. I mean, I'm not fluent in Turkish, but I was for a long time interested about Turkish language, and it was because of music. Because for me, that was something I got, like, I can feel, and I wanted to know, I wanted to understand, and that has happening to me as well with Portuguese. I feel more confident with Portuguese. And yeah, Portuguese, Brazilian music and Portuguese music is beautiful. So for me, it's a great joy to just to listen to it, and that always turns on, let's say, my curiosity.
And would you say that this also helps you overcome that, or maybe perhaps we can work backwards with it, if speaking is a challenge for you personally in another language, and does music help you with that somehow, or does it maybe help you overcome some other hurdles that you typically experience as a language learner?
Um, well, with for speaking, my personal experience and the way I use music as well with my students is I don't use it as a center of the lessons or of the learning the language process, but as a like a sweet, like a treat you can have, right? Because of course, in the case of my language, Spanish, music in Spanish, music from Spain, and also music from Latin America is now trendy somehow.
Very
You can
much,
listen
yes.
to people speaking in Spanish. It was very rare when I was younger, but now people at least know Despacito or things like that.
Right.
Yeah, I've heard that in a party. What does it mean? And when I explain it, it's oh, I like the song. Da, da, da. So yeah, is people are getting close to my culture through music. I think I would use it as a way to get vocabulary, uh, sometimes pronunciation, but for
Yeah, that's
pronunciation,
questionable sometimes.
exactly, because it depends a lot on the rhythm, and of course musicians have to make it flow, right? The accents in music are different to the accents when you speak, so I wouldn't recommend for getting the right pronunciation of the language, but are something that could open a conversation. There's some beautiful songs that always you can approach and you can extract a whole conversation from it, because they have a story, they have some connection with an important moment of the history of the country, that was written. So that's why I say I use it as a treat, because it's always something that transmit emotion naturally, as a way to get the vocabulary and also something to build a conversation from. But yeah, so that would be my recommendation about how to approach music for languages. That's how I do it, at least.
And would you say that that's part of your superpower?
Uh, Yeah, that's it's connected. It's connected because that's one of the that's one of my superpowers, and I've used it. Not everyone has the same connection with music or the same curiosity towards music. Uh, some people do, of course. So yeah, that's been my way. So definitely in my profile of superpowers, that has always been there, and that helps me a lot.
And in your experience with, like you said, teaching people from various ages and from various locations, have you noticed that there is something that, I don't want to say everybody, of course, but perhaps the majority of people struggle with? That there's one thing that, whether they are visual or kinesthetic or auditory, that there is just this one thing that most people struggle with?
Um, wow, that's you mean it doesn't depend their mother tongue, like just something that all learners would struggle with. Yeah.
Right, right.
Um, well, we have to go back to uh human beings, I think, and is
Certainly.
the ego, the ego.
Mm,
Yeah, I think that that's something that we all have, and teaching adults, definitely your ego is getting stronger, and that's not good. And it's that we don't like to make mistakes. We feel sort of stupid or less respectable, I'd say, when we make mistakes. So we're not really unconsciously, even if you generally want to learn the language, unconsciously, you don't want to expose yourself because it's vulnerable, makes you feel vulnerable, right? So that's a constant, but depends a lot on the personality and the experience of that person learning. The more you learn, the more curious you are about new things or getting new skills, uh, the more confident you feel, or let's say relaxed you feel about making mistakes, or confident you feel about it's going to be fine. I'm still honorable
yeah, yeah,
after
yeah, yeah.
making mistakes. Nothing's going to happen. This person is not going to think less of me because of this. Yeah, I just try to build this experimentation space. That's mainly what I say. The lessons are that this is not meant to be a conversation that you have with someone at the dinner party, right? Or with your in-laws or with your boss or whatever. This is an experimentation place. So right, if you make mistakes, it will just help. Or I just say, well, this is not going to make any interference in the in the information. So don't worry too much about it. We just have to work on it. Just remember that rule or remember this structure, but it's not going to affect you too much. So I think that that's something that repeats. Every culture is going to express it differently. Some people would just, I wouldn't say punish, but make themselves have a hard time just because, oh, I shouldn't have said that, this is, and other people just keep mute. So unless they feel that they're completely ready, that their brain has the perfect structure and has passed through their monitor and all the filters, they don't talk. So and it's a cultural thing as well. So I could say they already have some ways to detect this fear, according to the country that person is from. It's like, okay, it's because he or she is not feeling confident about the structure, so let's find another way. But yeah, ego is something that everyone struggles with. I do.
Certainly.
Everyone does.
Of course. Of course, definitely. And like you said, I feel like this is a very much coming back to what we were talking about before, one of those universal principles that whether this is language or if you're playing an instrument or if you're talking about your profession or anything that you do in life, I feel like there's always that, like you said, that little person in the back of your head saying, oh no, you didn't do that right. Oh no, that wasn't the right structure to use. Oh no, you should have done that instead. And
Exactly.
there's
People will
just
think
always
you're
that
stupid.
nagging voice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're the worst critics, right? We're our worst critics. So yeah, yeah,
Indeed,
that's
indeed. And something that I love to do as a little experiment with the people that I work with is basically what you just said, that okay, oh, they're gonna think that I'm stupid or that I can do this, that I can say that. Okay, has anybody ever actually said that to you? Has that ever actually happened to you, that somebody said, oh hey, you're stupid because you made a mistake? Well, no. Here's your answer.
exactly, exactly. yeah, and that happens with, yeah, with something that, yeah, with music also happened when I was teaching music. It was the same thing, right? That sometimes you make a mistake, you get the wrong chord. No one noticed it. I mean, someone who really knows a
Yeah,
lot about
sure.
music or things like that, but no one is going to say like, "Oh, that was horrible. Why did you lose that one? Why did you
Yeah,
miss
yeah.
that one?" So yeah, people understand, right? And we, I think we have to look at ourselves as friends, right? Times not like what a friend would say about this. Ah, that you can do it better next time, right? So we should do the same with our, in our brain. We should say, okay, what a friend would say to me. That's fine. That maybe you have had a difficult day. Some people are arrive to the lessons and they're tired because they're adults and they have a life and everything. So if they forget a simple rule or they forget a word, it's like, that's all right. I mean, that happens. Or you just think about a random word in the language you're learning while you're at work. It's just
Yeah.
yeah, that's just fine. It's just fine.
I feel like this very often comes back to those rather unrealistic expectations, and I feel like a lot of people see native speakers as the deities and the be all end all and so on, where in reality, I mean, even native speakers sometimes forget words and they make mistakes in their sentences, and nobody really cares at the end of the day. So I feel
The
like
message
learners
is
have this,
there.
oh no, I have to be perfect, but
Exactly.
do
Yeah,
you?
exactly. Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame. I sometimes put some audios and some videos and content where Spanish speakers are making mistakes, right? And I say, well, we declare ourselves guilty of this, right? It's a mistake that native speakers do a lot. So it's fine. We're not perfect either. It depends on many things. So we just change the words at the end. It's just, yeah, yeah. Or we're not good at all the language, all the vocabulary, right? So I make this example when I went to the dentist here in the UK, and I had to explain what was happening. I had to say to the dentist, it's like, well, you have to be patient with me because I've never talked about
Yeah.
dentist thing to this level of experience, basic things, teeth, tooth, that's it,
Yeah,
toothbrush,
right.
tongue. But you never go to those details, and they said, yeah, that's fine. Explain it to me, right? What you're feeling, right? So yeah, you don't have to. I don't even know if I was able to talk about all of it in Spanish as well. Dentist stuff in
Right.
Spanish, that's level of expertise. So yeah, it's like not even native speakers know all the language. It's impossible.
And Angela, I feel like this leads us very nicely into what we started briefly talking about with those cross-cultural experiences and things that you've only really been able to experience because you had that language background, whether this is Spanish or English or perhaps Portuguese or maybe a little bit of Turkish. Can you share any of those maybe interesting or profound experiences that you've had with those, let's say, exchanges of culture?
Yeah. Well, I became, my friend said once that I should write a book about curiosities because sometimes I have some random stories. I imagine it happens to you as well. Like, I had a student who said this, and that was great, that happened to him,
Yeah.
that happened to her. Um, but I think the biggest outtake that I have after teaching languages for a while is I was thinking a lot about that question, and is normally when I talk to people from small countries, that's a constant there. Small countries have to. I mean, it's easy to move from one country to the other when the country is very small, and they have an approach to languages that is unique, and is maybe when we're from big countries, we tend to believe that that's the universe. That everyone speak our language, that everyone is going to communicate with us, that everyone is fluent in like our language. But when you go to these small countries, that happens a lot with European small countries.
Mm,
As they approach languages in a very relaxed way. It's like this is just an exchange process, right? So they just look at it. They don't have those. Of course, everyone has this ego thing, but they don't have that fear of making mistakes that much because they say like, "Ah, I'm going to get better, you know." So Dutch people, for example, for me, I admire them a lot because they learned many languages, and when they approach Spanish, in my case, um yeah, they just relax, they just have fun. When so it doesn't work this way, of course it has to be Spanish, it has to be different. So it's such a light and happy way to approach the language because they know that learning languages is natural. It's part of what you have to do because you just drive for an hour and you're outside of your
Yeah,
country,
yeah,
right? So
basically.
you're going to listen to other people speaking other things or having a different approach to stuff or whatever. So confusions, misunderstandings, lost in translations are part of their lives. So they don't get to go into I have to be perfect and I have to say and I have to be polite and say, would you like to have a cup of tea with me? If they just say tea, please, would be enough, and they're
Right.
happy with it. So I think that's something I've learned a lot. So when I learn languages, I tend to be perfectionist. So I understand my students when they behave the same way because that's what happens to me. I just think, wow, it's just part of it, and just think as a Dutch person or someone from Denmark would, or someone from Luxembourg would, or these small countries,
So
Switzerland. Yeah, they learn so nicely because they just are used to make mistakes and communicate the best way. So yep.
I always love those stories from Switzerland. I have one student in Switzerland, and she talks about it sometimes because she loves going on hikes and going to different parts of the country. And sometimes she says, "Oh, I went to the Italian part, and they had this very nice demeanor, and then I went to the French part, and they don't speak any English, but they just speak French, and I don't speak French, and then there's just this. It's impossible that it's just one single country, and yet you can drive 1 hour, take a train 1 or 2 hours in another
Different
direction, and
world.
you don't understand anybody all of a sudden. So it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a gift they have, and at least in languages, is a gift. I think in many aspects, but yeah, it has helped me to see them learning. For me to reflect on the way I learn and the way that maybe other people from big countries learn. It's like, don't worry, don't worry. This is it's just a journey, literally.
And I would assume that it's the exact opposite with Latin America, since so many of the countries, basically what all of them except for
Yeah.
Brazil, speak Spanish. And so it's okay, well, I go here, 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 and everybody speaks the same language. So would you say that it's been a big shift for you personally because of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Europe is a great place to look at and learn from because it's the complete opposite to the Americas, right? We just have English and Spanish and French and Portuguese, but in huge extensions. So
Yeah.
even Brazilians sometimes never feel the need of learning another language because Brazil is huge and they
Yeah.
have so many things to do in their own country. So yeah, and the same happened with my country is not the biggest. Colombia is not the biggest, but also we have lots of entertainment from other Latin American countries. So we could easily get our whole life without touching another
Yeah.
language, right? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we can access to information, education, everything without having to work too much. So yeah, that's definitely something that's why it helped me so much. Yeah, because you just expand your world.
And I've heard of Portuñol as well, so I guess that helps.
I know, Portuñol is one of the very the practical ways to communicate. Yeah, yeah, and it's because of football. It's a huge connection there. But we're used to listen to interviews from from Brazilian
Okay.
football players,
Yeah, yeah.
and we just say like, this person is talking about this and that. You can get it, so you think, oh, Portuguese is easy. It's going to be easy to speak, and then
Right.
all the misunderstandings are the funniest.
I would imagine. I would imagine. Perfect, perfect. Angela, and tell me, is there anything that we haven't approached today? Anything that you would like to add? Any tips, tricks?
Well, I would like to invite people to find out what superpower they have. The website that you said that you're going to put there,
Yes.
the link for Light Spanish. There you're going to find, if you're curious about that superpower, it's going to give you the result. The website is in English, so for your students, it's going to be a great practice. And if you have any interest about learning Spanish, well, definitely what we work is with one-to-one sessions. We work with group sessions. We're opening to different services because what I want is to build that playground. That's my dream. I really want to build a playground. So it's going to be expanding in the future. If you listen to this podcast in the future, maybe you're going to find more things. But there you can find already some stuff. There is some free practice. We are helping people to reach fluency and confidence in the language. What I say, normally we work with adults, people who have maybe busy lives and they think that they cannot include it. So we always find a way to make it happen. So you're welcome to have a look at the website, to see the free content, to get to know our teachers. The tutors that are working there in Spanish have built a nice environment for people to get fluent in the language.
And I'll also be adding all of your social media links, Instagram, TikTok. Where do
Yeah,
you live?
yeah. My most active social media is Instagram and TikTok. I mean, I try to keep active in both of them. So it is at light dot Spanish, right? So the dot there is differentiation. You can find there every day. I have some little tips, some tricks about language acquisition as well, because as you can see, something I'm obsessed about. So I talk about vocabulary, grammar, yes, of course, but I also talk about how to overcome those limitations that we put on ourselves, some kind of psychological approach to it. I love that. So yeah, you can find all those little tips on Instagram.
Wonderful, wonderful. Any last words?
Oh, thank you very much. Because we have mainly talked about something I love to talk about. So I'm very excited.
Of course.
So thank you very much for the conversation, for having me here. And yeah,
It's been an absolute pleasure for me, as well as maybe you can tell. It's also something that I find incredibly fascinating, and I very much love talking to so many different people about it because it really broadens that horizon of, okay, somebody learns in this way and somebody learns in this way and somebody teaches in this way and somebody just approaches it from a completely different way, that, oh, okay, even I'm learning something as we talk. So I absolutely
yeah.
love these exchanges and these conversations, and thank you too, of course, for making the time to meet with me today. It's very, very nice listening to you, and I'm sure that anybody that joined us here today thinks so too.
Thank
Hey, I'm glad to see you here. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this conversation, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Do zobaczenia.